All right, Bull, I can't wait to hear your Guardians preview because yesterday you really piqued my interest when you talked about a specific catcher that you think this team should target.
I got one, too. Let's see if it's the same.
Yeah, okay. I want to see if it is the same. So you tell us what you got.
By the way, quick stat, the Browns have 7 losing seasons in the last 8 years. The Steelers have 7 losing seasons since 1972.
No, How nauseating is that? I feel great now. Thank you.
You did all that to serve us up that. Yo, you dirty.
Sorry. Here's the catcher that now I'm not sure the team would ultimately trade him, but this team definitely wants to trade a catcher. He probably is not the one they want to trade, but I think the Indians have the prospects to get him. You'd have team control for 5 years, and he's a good defensive player and a fantastic hitter. And Jason, you want to guess who it is?
I think we're on the same team, but we might have different catchers.
Are you talking about a team up north of us?
That could be really interesting then.
Oh, no, we're different. We're different. Go ahead.
Okay, so I'm thinking Alejandro Kirk of the Blue Jays. Now, he was an all-star last year, so you're like, why would the Blue Jays trade him? Well, the Blue Jays have a ton of talent, but they have 3 good catchers. Their best prospect, Gabriel Moreno, who came up last year, is a catcher. Danny Jansen, who they've had for a number of years, who's an excellent defensive player and a solid hitter with good power, is a catcher. And so is Alejandro Kirk. So they can afford to trade one of those guys for other things. The the Guardians, as we know, have a ton of and you'd have to give up a lot to get him because he's under team control for 5 more years. Like I said, he's good on both ends. He doesn't look like he'd be a good catcher. If you've seen him, he's like 5'8", 240 or something.
Yeah, he doesn't look like he'd be a catcher at all.
But he fits perfectly on this team. He makes great contact. And he has some power too. He's a slugger, so he'd be. Now you have to give up a lot to get him, but that would be my top guy at catcher. But there's other options, guys. Wilson Contreras is out of the Guardians market. He's going to get a $100 million contract. But also on the Blue Jays, Danny Jansen, who I just mentioned there, a little more veteran, has a few years left on his deal, but would be an upgrade. Christian Vasquez in free agency, and Sean Murphy also from Oakland.
Now,
Did I get one of your guys there?
That was my guy.
Yeah, I'd take any of those guys.
Bull, for the casual fans, they'll say, hey, well, don't you have Bo Naylor? Like, do you mean these guys are better than him, or is he not a top prospect, or why to the regular fan would you have?
Yeah, why would we have to go outside the organization?
Okay, and what I would say to that is, and maybe Bo Naylor ends up being a part of these trades, is I got a lot of good young players already on this team, some that have proven it, some that have started to prove it. I don't want to have a rookie or second-year player in every single spot in the lineup. So in some spots, I got to give up some of my prospects, maybe including Bo Naylor, to make sure I have a veteran. And catcher's a spot where I'd rather have a veteran player. Now, Alejandro Kirk is a young guy, too. I mean, I think he's only like 24 years old. He's only been in the big leagues for parts of 3 years. Last year was the first year that he actually had the full season in the big leagues. But the guy's real good and under team control. Bo Naylor, I know it feels like right now every Guardians prospect's going to pan out because so many did this past season. But it's not always going to work that way. And I think there are spots where you'd rather add some veterans. I got 3 spots really 4 spots where I'd like to do that.
Bull,
and that's one of them, catcher.
About leaning too heavily on the young guys. I just remember Oscar Mercado, too. And I thought he was a plug-and-play guy that had figured it out.
I got destroyed for saying that earlier this year. Because I wasn't comparing Quan to Mercado.
No, I'm not either. But it's a cautionary tale.
Right, absolutely.
Just because, and that's a great point that you don't want to load up too heavily on these young guys because just because they've made it. So the first year, that barrier to entry to being an everyday player in Major League Baseball is very difficult. But now it's really prove it time. Because now the league has a book on you.
Now they got tape on you.
And so what happened with Mercado was he had holes. And with the scouting staff being what it is now, if you have a weakness, they're going to find it, and they are going to kill you with it until you prove you can handle that.
Rarely does success go like this.
I know.
It's always like
that's right.
Very rocky.
Then you go.
So what y'all doing is y'all telling me there's a good chance that maybe 3 to 4 of our young players have a potential of falling off.
I wouldn't say that.
Not falling off, but not playing.
I would expect one of them too. I would just say the law of averages is one of them, and I'm not saying it's going to be as drastic as Mercado was, but one of them we're going to look at in July next year and say, and I hope it's not Oscar Gonzalez. He's the guy that I think really has figured it out. But one of these kids, maybe it's Quan, I don't know. One of them we're going to look at in July next year and say, what the hell happened? Was last year a mirage? No. This year, everybody's changing what they're doing to him. They've got the entire offseason to figure out the plan. Once the book is out, it's out. Mm-hmm. And so, Bull, I'm with you. I would much rather they go out and get, because we do have one in the pipeline in Bo Naylor. But catchers are tricky. We thought Mejia was going to be that guy.
Right.
Catchers are very
tricky. They traded him twice.
I know. Well, sometimes you get intoxicated with a guy's talent, and you think, well, he can't miss. But at catcher, it's odd. There's so much to the position of catcher. Right. It's not just your bat. It's how you work with pitchers, your communication skills, your ability to retain the knowledge of 400 hitters that you're going to see throughout the season. So I would rather they go the proven route with the catcher. Yeah. And the prospect thing is dicey for me at that position.
And remember, guys, the Guardians have, I know this sounds crazy, but they actually have too many good prospects at this point. You can't keep them all.
Right.
And so, which is why they're going to have to make at least one trade of significance before the Rule 5 draft, which is, what, 4 weeks away, roughly?
Right.
Give or I can't remember exactly when
they've
what
got
the
more
meetings
guys they need to protect. It's not quite as drastic as it was last winter. But you're right. There are more names out there. There's a couple of guys that they need to squeeze onto the 40-man. And they do need to make a deal. Like a guy like Nolan Jones, who's a lefty power hitter, who is basically an exact duplicate of Josh Naylor. He's got power, but he can't hit lefties. There's no spot for him now. Jose Ramirez is locked up long-term at third. He's a duplicate of Naylor at first. What are you going to do with him?
Right.
And, Jason, I think, listen, Oakland, if we're talking Sean Murphy, who I know you were going to bring up.
That was my guy.
I like Murphy. Right? I would take him in a heartbeat.
Oakland's got no talent. They've got nothing. So they are a team, more even than the Blue Jays, that would love to get a guy like Nolan Jones, because Nolan Jones is starting and playing every day for Oakland. They're just going to put him out there every day. And you could trade them, one top prospect,
would you
maybe
throw
two.
in Bo Naylor in that deal?
They've already got two
I
young.
would think.
The top prospect they got in the Matt Olson deal is a catcher. That's why they're moving on from Murphy.
They've
got two other guys.
Everybody a top
those
five
are the two teams.
catcher?
No, those are Toronto and Oakland are the two teams that are just absolutely stacked.
Who would have known?
Catcher right now.
Yeah.
I think in free agency you could get Vasquez maybe 2 for 16, which for the maybe 2 for 20 max, which is for the Guardians is not unreasonable. I mean, they were paying Hedges like $5 million, and Vasquez is a much better hitter than Hedges.
Yeah, he was at $4 million. Zach Meisel, who I think does a terrific job with all this stuff. I was having this conversation with him. He thinks Murphy's a perfect fit as well. He's got 3 years of control left, just entering arbitration this year, projected to make less than Hedges, to your point, about $500,000 less than what Hedges made. But he thinks there's room for Murphy and both Naylors at catcher, first base, and DH, that those three guys, that way you're not trading Bo Naylor for Sean Murphy. Like I said, the A's already have two top prospects. And that's a way to sort of, you have Murphy now as the entrenched veteran. You can bring Bo Naylor along slowly. You're only going to have Murphy for 3 years, maybe 2 if you trade him with a year left. And he's a right-handed bat. He had 18 home runs last year. That would rank 3rd on the Guardians in terms of power. So he brings that power bat.
They got to go get they also got to get a slugger at first base and DH, I think.
Well, Jose Abreu makes sense, and I know his power numbers dropped. And again, I was talking to Zach about it. Zach thinks he's still going to find an everyday job next year. If you bring him here, is he your everyday first baseman?
I would take him as our everyday first baseman right now.
And then what do you do? And then Josh Naylor becomes the DH.
He's a platoon DH that hits. I mean, it was really glaring in the playoffs, but even through the regular season, you've got to have some success against lefties. You just have to.
Yeah.
And he has none. And it's just another hole in a lineup that already had 2 big holes in it to begin with, whether it was lefty or righty. So
now is that something you think he can get done, or is that a clickbait one?
No, I think Abreu. I don't think Abreu's
Abreu's possibility.
Yeah. To me, he fits the mold of Encarnacion. Like he's that kind of a player. He's
Toward
a guy
the end of his career,
later in his career.
He had a good average,
give
good
him
OPS,
2,
all
maybe
that.
even throw 2 with an option.
Now his power and run production just plummeted.
It did, and I wondered how much of that. Chicago was a mess this year.
They had a ton of injuries.
I wondered about Abreu. Is he a guy that just lost interest because of what happened there this season? You can see how that could happen for a veteran.
Yeah.
But they were just a train wreck from jump, and he wasn't a motivated bat. Put him in this Cleveland lineup where he's surrounded by young, energetic, exciting players. it may re-energize his career, and it might be one of those things where it's good for a scene change is good for him to come to a team like this. I would love to get Abreu.
Two other first base DH options. I don't think Rizzo's realistic, so we'll leave him out.
Yeah, I don't either.
Josh Bell, who's a free agent. He's been an up-and-down player in his career, but he's a switch hitter.
Did have an all-star season, at least one.
Yes, I think it was 2019, I believe.
It was when the game was here. Yeah.
And he's got huge power. I mean, he's a big-time power. He struggled after he got traded to the Padres last year, but he was having a really good season before he got traded for Washington. And one other guy, this guy's not a power hitter, but he's an excellent hitter and fits the mold. You know, if you can't get the big slugger, he was here before, Yandy Diaz. The Rays are looking probably moving on from him at this point.
I always liked Yandy.
Zach mentioned him as well.
I just couldn't understand why he wasn't a power hitter. I mean, you talk about looking
so
apart.
Big.
Yeah.
He just
a lot of doubles, but
a lot of doubles, but just no home run power whatsoever.
Just doesn't lift the ball. Just doesn't get it elevated.
Yeah, it's crazy. It really is.
But he walks more than he strikes out.
Bo, before we move to final takes, you had mentioned yesterday that you want sort of a middle of the rotation starter. Any names for us on that? Who you'd like to see them chase?
I mentioned a couple of weeks ago maybe bringing back either Corey Kluber or Carlos Carrasco on short-term deals. But if you want a guy a little more exciting, the Marlins could trade Pablo Lopez, who's been a really solid starter for them for a couple of years. Now, he's only got 2 years left to control, so I'm not 100% sure the Guardians will want to do that. Maybe they feel like they could lock him up long-term. He's not a star pitcher, but he's a good pitcher. And the Marlins got a ton of pitching, and they got no hitting in their pipeline. So the Marlins and Guardians, I think, make a lot of sense with all the hitting depth that they have in the minor leagues to work out a deal for Pablo Lopez.
I think they're going to move on from Zach Plesac.
I think they
definitely
should.
Yeah,
have to.
Yeah, so I think your rotation. I think they're going to ride it out with Bieber. He's got 2 years of control left. I don't think Ahmed Rosario's back.
Really?
I think.
Don't?
I don't. Well, wow. I mean, listen. Rosario's going to make $9 million. Bieber's going to make $10 million. Can they afford to pay both of those guys and Jose and some of the other stuff?
Yes, they can.
But
they'll be a middle-tier team, but it's right now they're 26th or whatever.
And also, Rosario's
Jason, they should be able to have an
80,
90 million payroll at least.
Okay, but what they should do and where they're at is not always an alignment. I'm just saying he's down to his last year control. They moved him to short to trade him. And it worked so well, they couldn't get him out of the lineup, and they couldn't trade him.
I'll be disappointed if they move on from him.
I don't think personally, this isn't like source. This is just me.
A tough sell.
I don't think Rosario and Bieber are both back on this team.
That is a tough sell.
And we saw that they were confident in Gabriel Arias. They played him at first.
But, see, Jay,
in the divisional series. They think he's ready.
It reminds me of 17, where this club is. I know they didn't make the deep run this year like the Indians did in 16, but to me, you've got an opportunity to strike this fan base while it's hot.
Yeah.
Yep.
And if you move on from Rosario or Bieber, the overwhelming message that fans like G. Bush that aren't in the weeds are going to say is, what? He was a big part. Here we go again, dumping salary.
I think Bieber would be worse than Rosario.
Bieber would be a definite. They better not move Bieber.
But again, like they're going to at some point. He's got 2 years of control left. He's already rejected one long-term contract offer that they gave him after he won the Cy Young. Like, this is just the reality of it. They're going to move on at some point. They're not going to let him. They're not going to keep for 2 years and let him walk for nothing. And this is that sweet
another
spot.
Reminder of who we are and what we are.
That 2 years. They came close to trading Lindor when he had 2 years left on his deal. They were really close with the Dodgers. They had a deal set up with Ramirez last year. They were going to deal him with 2 years left before they came up with the extension. 2 years is really that sweet spot. Now, with Lindor, they kept him for one more year to make a run at it, and obviously that's where they are this year.
Well, I hope they do that at least with Bieber, because if they move Bieber in the offseason, they're going to lose a lot of fans.
So I think I think Bieber's back, but I don't think Bieber and Rosario are both back.
We'll see.
The only saving grace is if they do trade Rosario. I think we're to the point now where we assume when they trade players for prospects that the trade's going to pan out for the Guardians, because it almost always does.
Yeah, but you know what? It doesn't always work out, and they're due to have some clunkers.
Yeah, I'm going to be ticked if they trade Rosario.
I am too, because
think
you know
Jason's
what?
right. I wouldn't be surprised
you've got
if they
minority owners now that can help with payroll. I'm sick and tired of looking at the payroll rankings and seeing this Guardians team 27th or 28th. It's nauseating.
I'm going to tell you.
They've got playoff gate money from last year. Yep. It's time to reinvest in this baseball team.
Let's go.
Write some checks. Get the players in here that you need to make a difference. The window's here. Don't screw it up and start letting key pieces like Bieber go.
There's a lot of people that are fringe guys that is.
I know you'll lose them.
I'm jumping on it,
and that's why, attendance-wise, that's why they are where they are.
Yeah.
Because wash, rinse, repeat. Get star, lose star. Get star, lose star. It's time they start retaining some of them. And I know it's unrealistic to think they can re-sign Bieber to 5 year after he's up here.
Yeah, that's not happening.
No. All right.